Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Zoom Talks. My name is Sarah Jane and I am the education specialist. And today we are going to be talking about secondhand trauma. So in this work that we do, we are engaging with one of the most egregious human rights violations on the planet, human trafficking. And it can be really intense to engage with this issue. And so today we wanted to talk about how we can be affected by our work in ways that we can build our resilience and take care of ourselves. So I'm going to start. So in my role as an education specialist, it's really important for me to tell survivor stories. I think it's important when survivors are brave enough to tell their stories that I can share their experiences as a way to help people to really care about this issue and understand how people are affected by it. So sometimes when I'm listening to a survivor story, it can be particularly painful, especially when somebody experiences abuse at a very young age, when we think of kids as being very innocent, or they should be, innocent and being taken care of, and instead they're exploited, or experiences in familial trafficking, which is when somebody is exploited by a family member. Those can be really difficult, and I can definitely be an emotional person and sort of take that. So there are a few ways that I like to fill my cup. I really appreciate the analogy of filling your cup. If we want to give to other people, then we have to give to ourselves first so that we have something to give, essentially. So some ways that I like to do that are deep breathing and movement. I feel like are really powerful. We hold tension in our bodies, and when we take deep breaths, we can help to release that tension that we're holding on to. So deep breathing. I like to do yoga. I do yoga at home. Shout out to Yoga with Adrienne on YouTube. She has a lot of really great videos of varying lengths, and sometimes she'll have topics like yoga for depression, yoga for feeling alone, yoga for a rainy day, or whatever the case may be. I really enjoy those. And I also like to sing. It's something that I enjoy just on a personal level, and I know that that science of utilizing breath to connect various parts of your body, especially from your core and your chest and your throat, and thinking about the way that our breath moves through our body can be a really powerful thing. So that's how I like to fill my cup. What about you, Taylor?
Yeah, so I think for me, how I'm affected by my work, it's sort of weird because the work that I do is primarily focused on youth and the young people. So I'm thinking of like specific instances where there's one in particular where there was a laundry list of things that were going on in this person's life, and their trafficking situation that they were involved in it wasn't at the top of the list, and it was weird being in that situation where not that they just weren't processing that trauma in a way that would be visible to others. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah. So where I think it really becomes real for me is hearing parents of survivors. There was a program that we were able to do at the beginning of the year where that was sort of the primary goal, and that's kind of where I was really reminded of the work that we do and how it really affects different populations, and not even just the people that it happens to, but those people's family members and friends and loved ones. So I think that's where I sort of need to take care of myself, and the primary way that I do that, to kind of mirror what you were saying, is music. So I play guitar, right? And my thing with that is the ultimate physical release for me, because like you are literally doing it with your hands, and there's just something about putting a lot of like pressure into your fingers, and I play like really thick strings, and I use pics that are like really fat, and like I like to like dig in, you know, and there's something about that that just provides a lot of catharsis and emotional release. So I think that's what I would say is the most important self-care activity for myself. How about you, Samantha?
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Taylor. So I'm an outreach specialist. So a lot of my work deals with working with vulnerable populations. And I actually just started back in late February. So unlike some of my coworkers, I haven't had that 101 like type of this disclosure yet. So I haven't, had that communication with the victim yet. However, I have seen a lot of what our vulnerable populations struggle with. So sometimes, like with the homeless or the immigrants, or just, anyone in general who is in a very vulnerable situation. And I think it could definitely take a toll on my mental health to see that there are so many things that I can't help outside of like what I'm doing in that moment or in that day with that specific person or that population. And so I think it can definitely provoke a lot of guilt to kind of be able to, check out of work and then go home. But still know that like I'm going home to like a quote unquote like normal life, and that a lot of these people that I'm seeing on the weekly or bi-weekly, they don't get to do that. And so it definitely, it's hard to have that acceptance of that there's only so much that you can do for that individual. And even then, sometimes when we make referrals to specific things, it can be very discouraging to make a referral to somewhere where it might not be as efficient as you like. For example, the housing situation in Houston is right now is at capacity, and in the last few weeks when we've gone out into the community, we have realized that that's one thing that people are really struggling to find. And so it kind of does take a toll on both of us, and me and Brianna, on, hey, like, this is what we can do. We can provide this information, but aside from that, we can't fix the housing issue in Houston, and that kind of sucks to admit. And so for me to really go home and like sit with my own feelings and put a name to them, whether that be like being sad, being frustrated, being really mad, I think it's really important to like find the name for my feelings to see like how I can act after that, because I think depending on my feelings, that will also it will kind of like tell me like what I want to do. So if I'm feeling like really drained out, I typically spend a lot of time with my niece, because she's 2 years old, she's full of energy, she always wants to like run around, and that literally like it fills me up with energy like instantly. If I'm feeling really like mad or frustrated, I like to go work out. I think it's a good time to put in some headphones, put on some loud music, and just kind of do my own thing. But if I just feel like I need a real good pick-me-up, I can also just lay in bed like by myself, watch some The Office, and like have some good jokes, and that'll definitely pick me up too. So I think it definitely depends on what I'm feeling that day and what the situation is. What about you, Brianna?
Thanks so much for sharing that, Samantha. Yeah, so for me, so I'm Brianna, and I'm an outreach specialist, like Samantha said, with her. I have been doing this work longer than Samantha. I've been here for over a year now, and I have had a lot of those encounters with victims of trafficking who have disclosed. And for me, most of the time, I would say, like, the whole reason I'm in this work and in this type of work, even before this particular job, is because I feel like I experience a lot of compassion satisfaction, which basically is the opposite of compassion fatigue. So compassion fatigue is kind of the same thing as secondary traumatization. In other words, it's kind of like you take on that trauma and you kind of feel the effects of being traumatized. But compassion satisfaction refers to kind of getting fulfillment and satisfaction out of the fact that you know, yes, you're presented with this person who's been traumatized, but you're able to help in this situation. So that kind of makes you feel, you know, I guess fulfilled, or it's rewarding for you to be able to do that work. And so I feel that I would say the majority of the time, but there are always obviously those moments that all of us, you know, the trauma of the whole situation kind of gets to us. And for me, those moments are when, like Samantha was saying, when I feel like I've exhausted all of the resources, all of the knowledge that I have in my disposal to be able to help a particular individual, and it's still not enough. And so that's definitely very frustrating and very stressful. And I tend to have a lot of empathy for these individuals, so I tend to take on their feelings about the situation as well. And I think the other situation would be, for example, if maybe they are able to get kind of one of their physical needs met, whether it's housing or going to the doctor or whatever it may be, but they still are very, they haven't worked through the emotional part of their trauma. And I think in those situations as well, when I'm on the phone with someone and they're just sobbing their heart out and basically telling me everything that has happened to them, that those moments as well are what get to me, I would say. And for me, that kind of manifests more as trouble sleeping, for sure, kind of like Sarah Jane talked about, with like the tenseness in my muscles, sometimes maybe even a headache. So things like that. And for me, again, similar to Sarah Jane and Taylor, I think we tend to lean more towards the arts, I guess, in this group. But for me, my main de-stressor for sure is dancing. I have always loved dancing. I grew up dancing more informally, and in college, I kind of really got into Latin dancing and those styles. So now during COVID, obviously I'm not doing any social dancing or anything like that, but I'm still trying to stay connected to it by having like a private dance party, just me in my room, or maybe working on some of the techniques in Latin dance that I've been trying to improve on, or just like listening to that type of music while I'm working out or something like that. I would say also that if, let's say, I'm feeling just kind of like having an existential crisis, like really questioning things in life, I would say prayer journaling really helps me. I'm a religious person, and my faith has gotten me through like a lot of difficult times in my life. And so for me, journaling and like actually writing my thoughts and feelings and prayers down really helps me kind of process them, because sometimes I feel like they can just get all jumbled in my head. Another way, if you have those people in your life, is to just talk it out with someone else. I'm definitely an external processor, and actually I prefer verbal processing versus written processing, but sometimes you need to do it with other people and sometimes you just want to do it by yourself. So it just kind of depends on what you're feeling. And then also, of course, I will say I have my go-to show, like Samantha. Mine would be Grey's Anatomy for sure. I feel like every time I watch an episode, it just gets me in all the feels, the highs, the lows. It's very cathartic. I have cried several times at that show. So yeah, that's always like one of my favorites.
That's gorgeous. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
I just want to say this, just in the interest of transparency, but I feel like we might be coming from a place of privilege, like Samantha was talking about, that we can sort of, all of these issues that we're working with, we can just kind of put them away and leave them at work and then go home and be separate from them. And it's not necessarily a bad thing or a good thing. I just kind of want to acknowledge and put it out there that like we see that we have that, and we want to use our privilege for good to be able to help everybody. We as people, we're all equal no matter what we have experienced, no matter what we have gone through. We are all people. And for the survivors that we work with, we want to honor you. We want to honor your experiences. We want to honor your stories, and we want to work alongside you to help you in your recovery and to help, prevent this from happening to other people. And hopefully, as we've talked about ways that, we help ourselves and nourish ourselves, hopefully everybody watching this video has taken something that they realize that maybe they can bring into their own life to help them. You know, if we're going to go out in the world and we're going to stop human trafficking and fight racism and all of the other social justice evils, we need to make sure that we have nourished ourselves and we are ready to bring our best selves into this fight for justice. So thank you to everybody who has tuned in, and have a great rest of your day.